Hello everyone, welcome to Tech Plus Lab, and today we have a special product from China. It's a 4-in-1 torchlight from the brand Shustar, and the model number is S168. I found this on Alibaba, mentioning this as a emergency escape torch, which is more reasonable than calling it a adventure or camping torchlight. Its main features are a long distance light and a short distance cob light, a belt cutter, and a glass breaker. Of course, you can find this with several other brand names, but on Alibaba it's sold under the name of Tanje, and on AliExpress I found under a very well-known brand called Shustar. More reasonable specs that I found for this torchlight are: it's a 3-watt LED with 100 to 150 meters of distance for long range, and it has a battery of 800 milliamp hours and a battery backup of approximately 1 to 2 hours and a lumen count of approximately 100 lumens. I'm assuming that 100 lumens is for the front long range torch and not combined lumens. On some places it's also mentioned to have some waterproofing. Now let me just showcase the features real quick. This is your long range headlight. It's a pretty cheap LED, but it does the work. And here is the cob light. It has the battery indication light, which turns red when charging, green when it's fully charged. Of course, I'm not going to test the glass breaker and the seat belt cutter, but I'm pretty sure that they will work just fine. And I forgot to mention the pricing, but it starts at approximately $4 and all the way up to $10. And I wouldn't obviously recommend buying this at this price point, because if you're paying $10, you can definitely get a decent quality glass breaker and a seatbelt cutter and another good quality torchlight. But if you're only paying like $5, that's going to be a steal, obviously, because a cheap glass breaker would cost the same, and a seatbelt cutter and this torchlight will be your bonus. From pictures it might look like it's made out of metal, but it's actually made from plastic and it's really cheap. And more importantly, it weighs nothing, and that's the reason why it will be able to hold against metal with these small magnets on its head. Now let's open up and see if it's any good from the inside out. This whole torchlight is held together just by 4 head screws and 2 body screws. On opening, we actually find a 14500 battery and not a 18650, although it had space for one. A 14500 is your typical AA sized battery with lithium power. It's more like a 3.7 volt AA battery. It doesn't look that bad, I have seen worse, but it weighs nothing. It must be around a 150 mAh or 100 mAh just for testing purposes. This got me curious, so I assembled it back and turned it on after fully charging it and left it till the battery is drained, and it gave me approximately 1 hour and 45 minutes of backup. I'm not surprised, because the mentioned battery backup is 2 to 4 hours, and we should always go with the minimum numbers right there. Since we completely drained the battery right now, it's time to check for over discharge protection. To my surprise, this actually does have an over discharge protection, and the battery voltage right now is approximately 2.8 volts. That's a pretty decent range for a lithium battery. Even if I turn it back on, it will immediately turn off because of its voltage protection. I also tested for the charging voltage, and it is charging at the right voltage, and it also turns off the charging when it reaches approximately 4.2 volts. All this is because it's using a SM5401 IC. This probably isn't the best chip for high drain applications, but here the LED is so small that this chip will perfectly work. Upon reading the datasheet, I also realized that it also has a over temperature protection along with over charge and discharge protections. That's actually a pretty decent chip for this application, and I'm surprised that they're actually using this. It has only 800 milliamp hour charging current, but that should actually work. I mean, it's a really small battery, so that should work. But the problem here might be the battery capacity, because if it's a smaller capacity battery, then you shouldn't charge it over 2C. For example, if this is only a 300 milliamp hour battery, then you shouldn't charge it with a current of over 0.6 amps. So I disconnected the battery completely after draining it and charged it via the charger that shows me the capacity of the battery, and it showed up approximately 245 milliamp hours. But remember that this cannot be so accurate. These chargers don't always be super accurate regarding the capacity, so let's go with approximately 250 mAh or 300 mAh. With a little bit of calculation from this data, now we also know that LED might be approximately a 1 watt head LED and not 3 watts. And 100 lumens per watt is very typical these days, so I wouldn't say the specs were way too off. Of course, that also depends from where you're reading the specs from, because some sellers might say this as a 1000 lumen torch with 1 kilometer range, so you should know when they're actually lying. I'm actually pretty impressed with the IC in there. It actually has every safety feature, and it also has a sleep functionality, which means that it won't drain the battery when not in use. Since there is enough space for a lithium ion 18650 battery, I swapped this one with a higher capacity battery. Now this is a 2500 milliamp hour battery. Since this battery has 10 times more capacity than the original battery, now we should also have a battery backup that's 10 times more. At bare minimum, it should give us at least 10 hours of backup, and obviously I'm not testing that. I forgot to mention this also has a USB out for power bank feature, but what would you do with a 300 milliamp hour battery? That wouldn't even wake up some phones these days. But with this little upgrade, we might actually have enough juice for when we need it. But since working with lithium ions can be a little bit dangerous, I wouldn't recommend doing this on your own if you're not experienced enough to do so. As you can see, we don't have any O-ring protections around anywhere in this construction, so this is not at all waterproof. It will hold up a couple of splashes, but that's about it. One issue by upgrading this battery might be the weight of the battery itself, and this weight might be a little too much for those little weak magnets, so you might want to install some high powered neodymium magnets in the place of these weaker ones. This shouldn't be an issue if you don't want to use the magnet, of course, because this can do tail stand and also stand on its head. Overall, I think this is a great little tool if you just want to leave it in your car dashboard for emergency situations, and if you do upgrade the battery, it will be even better. It doesn't have much to complain except for not having waterproofing and a bad battery. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Have a nice day.